The Madman! Welcome to the one, the only, the infamous Trump Star review for Fractured and Alterac Valley cards. So let's get started class by class, starting alphabetically with the Demon Hunter. This set's theme for Demon Hunter appeared to be token, with cards such as Field of Strife, Flag Runner, Battle-Worn Vanguard, and Urzul Giant. I just don't think that's going to work. I don't think it is superior to any deck. Plus, you're going to run into a bunch of control and or OTK decks without many minions for you to actually do the combo with. There's another theme to this set as well, and that's big demons. And I don't think big demons are going to work as well. The payoff is not quite that good. So cards such as Warden of Chains, Sigil of Reckoning in particular, just seems like such a weak card compared to Skull of the Minari that it's hard to put this as anywhere near good. Battle-Worn Vanguard, I rated a 2-star just because I think it's a decent card. It's just one of those, hey, on paper that looks like a strong card. If Tempo Demon Hunter is ever a deck, I would see the Battle-Worn Vanguard in there for sure. Similarly, that deck would probably run Flanking Maneuver, which is just Restless Mummy, except mostly better. I do think that card will just slot right into the current Fell Demon Hunter, which I think is tier 3, hence the 3-star ranking on Flanking Maneuver. Carrier Full Soul I'm putting at 4 stars. I think that she goes into a pretty specific deck. I mean, obviously you look at her and it's like, oh yeah, the big demon deck. But I think you put Carrier Full Soul into exactly one deck that's currently pretty good. The Death Rattle Demon Hunter deck, which runs exactly one type of demon, Illidari Inquisitor. 8 mana, 8/8 rush. Well, now you can have another copy. Carrier Full Soul will be the 6 mana, 6/6 rush. After your hero attacks an enemy, this attacks it too. So you have Baby Inquisitor. Daw. There's an outside chance that maybe Big Demon is actually decent as well. If you do get her on the Pit Commander card, that is legitimately quite good. Kurtrus Demon Render, 2 stars. I just don't really see a place for this. This seems like a generally reasonable card, but there's not really a place for it. The place where it really would see play is in the combo end of the Token Demon Hunter deck, where you finished with a Expendable Performers with a Fell Fire Deadeye while you had Kurtrus Demon Render on the board. But I don't think such a deck will be good enough. So all in all, I'd say that Demon Hunter mostly gets some cards that may be good for the current archetypes of Flanking Maneuver as a generally good card, but into the Fell Demon Hunter certainly, and carry a Fell Soul into perhaps the Death Rattle Demon Hunter, copying the Inquisitor. For Druid, we only got one 1-star card actually. Capture Cold Tooth Mine. I just think 2 mana is too much to pay to get the top or the bottom card, and I don't really see a reason why you would want the top or the bottom costing card. For Celestial Druid, you got a few cards. You got Pathmaker, Pride Seeker, which are both 2 stars for me, as well as Wildheart Guff, which is 3 stars. Pathmaker and Pride Seeker both may potentially see play in Celestial Druid. I'm not entirely sure they will. Hard to find cards to cut from that deck, and hard to say if these cards are good enough. But essentially, they both have the benefit of being able to make Nourish quite a lot better. Wildheart Guff is just a reasonable card for a lot of decks that aren't aggro. Kind of like a Nourish type effect. You gain your 5 armor, you gain your mana crystal for use immediately, you get to draw your card. I expect to see Wildheart Guff in any value-oriented Druid deck, but I don't see a value-oriented Druid deck appearing at the moment. A lot of these cards support the Beast Druid archetype, of which I think is going to be high tier 3, low tier 2, because the current aggro Druid is so strong. And I imagine that if you replaced a lot of those cards with beasts, you would still have a very reasonable deck. I think it's going to end up being weaker than the current aggro Druid, hence the ratings of most of them around 3 or 4 stars. But we got Frostwolf Kennels, 3-star, Heart of the Wild, 2-star, Dire Frostwolf, 3 stars, Wing Commander Mulverick, 2 stars, Frostsaber Matriarch, 4 stars, all of which are essentially centered around the idea that Beast Druid is going to be like a high tier 3, low tier 2 deck. And then finally, Claw Fury Adept, 5 stars. That of course goes into the Beast Druid deck, but most importantly, I believe it goes into the current aggro Druid deck. 2 mana, 2/3, that gives all characters, including you, your character, +1 attack. That's nice. In recap, I think that Druid has a pretty reasonable deck. Beast Druid, it's going to be compared directly with Aggro Druid, and it might be quite comparable. The general theme of Hunter appears to be, well, there's two big themes to it. One is a secret hunter, which I think just won't work because the secrets are too weak. It's kind of like a value deck, but Hunter playing a value deck, I just don't see happening here. Ice Trap, Ram Tamer, Dunbalder, Bunker, Spring the Trap, decent cards, but decent is not powerful enough. And the rest of the deck that you have to build these around is quite bad, I would say. In terms of the Beast idea, you got Revive Pet, you got Stormpike, Battle Ram, you got Mountain Bear, and I just don't see a big Beast deck for Hunter working out. And now for the cards that are actually potentially going to see play. We got Bloodseeker at 2 stars. This one is a tough rate because it really does depend on how many 2 health minions probably on turn 2 are going to appear, or maybe even turn 1. The more there are, the better the Bloodseeker will be. I ultimately think that this card will probably not find enough 2 health minions and will a lot of the time be a 2 attack, 2 durability weapon for 2, and that's just terrible. And then you got Beaststalker Tavish, 2 stars. I don't really see a place for this. This is like the value card for Hunter, and Hunter does not have a viable value deck at the moment. It's very similar to Deathstalker Rexar. I think that Hunter is not really going to get anything new in this set. Some people might try out the Spring the Trap plus some secret package in Quest Hunter, and I think it's going to be a bad idea. The Mage cards were very much built around the idea of big spell mage, and I just don't see big spell mage happening. One, you're not going to be able to cast these big spells. You won't survive long enough. 2, the payoff for casting these big spells isn't big enough. So cards for the big spell mage such as Belinda Stonehearth, Mass Polymorph, Rune of the Archmage, and Iceblood Tower, these are just all 1-star cards in my opinion. Can't figure out a way to like actually win with that deck. I got Magister Dawngrasp, which may or may not fit into the big spell mage theme because you're encouraged to cast 1 big spell of each type. And that's just not big enough of a payoff, and wow, at 8 mana cost, that's rather a lot. Arcane Brilliance and Build a Snowman are both similar ideas as well. They're value mage cards, and I don't think there's enough tools around for a value mage deck. In that case, so is Shivering Sorceress and Amplified Snow Flurry. They get you to the later game. They help you survive against aggro. Shivering Sorceress would even be really good in a Tempo Mage deck, but I don't believe that that Tempo Mage deck would outclass any of the current Tempo decks. Right now, mages are really encouraged not to run minions because of the Spring Water. So that brings us to our final card, Siphon Mana, 2 stars. I think that card might be played in some sort of Quest Mage or some OTK Mage. Paladin has one theme that I think does not work. That would be Big Paladin. So all these cards here in Big Paladin, Vitality Surge, Protect the Innocent, Cavalry Horn, Templar Captain, and Brasswing. 1 star, too slow, no shot, no tools to actually work. Commencement Paladin, nah. But, on the other hand, the other stuff is actually quite good, I think. For your hand buff Paladin, you have Sidon the Scarlet, which, you know, naturally fits into the theme of hand buffing. You got your Stonehearth Vindicator for your Libram Paladin deck, and Libram Paladin is pretty good. With Stonehearth Vindicator, you can get both Hand of Adal as well as Libram of Wisdom. You might even get Hold the Bridge, which I'm rating 2 star. Stonehearth Vindicator 4 star. Perhaps you would see Stonehearth Vindicator in the non-Libram Paladin decks as well, where you run Hand of Adal and Hold the Bridge as your other holy spell that you would get. And then in all of your Paladin decks, you might run Lightforged Cariol 5 stars. While I give Lightforged Cariol 5 star, I think this is one of the, you know, I'm not entirely sure that she actually belongs in 5 stars. I do think that she's played in Hand Buff Paladin, certainly, which I'm not entirely sure will be tier 1, maybe tier 2. And I do think that she has a very decent chance of being played in Libram Paladin, which is probably tier 1/tier 2-ish. Certainly in any value or big Paladin, if those existed, those would also play Lightforged Cariol. It's a big value over time card, and value over time I just don't really see as being that good. So I would not actually be surprised if this card that I'm rating 5 stars may not actually make the cut for even hand buff Paladin. Like, I could actually see a world where Lightforge Gale is not played in that deck. And then we got the wild card, Dunbaldar Bridge, 4 stars. This was kind of a surprise to me. Maybe you played on turn 4, let the first charge expire, but turn 5 and turn 6, every single one of your minions that you play gets +2. And you can play quite a number of those. Let's say you play 3 on turn 5, 3 on turn 6. That's a +12/+12. It's almost like a 12/12 for 4 mana in that way. And you can do quite a bit better than that if you run stuff like Derailed Coaster. There's a bunch of Paladin cards that summon a bunch of guys. Dunbaldar Bridge. It could work. Priest gets 2 main themes here. One is random cards that might be good in a Priest deck, maybe? And all of these are super random and I don't think are actually good. Shadow Word Devourer 2 limited, Luminous Geode, a minion-based Priest deck? I don't think so. Bless goes with Luminous Geode, but I just don't see any reason why that is any good. Deliverance, a kind of value-oriented control priest thing. Not really what you're looking for in priest. You got Stormpike Aid Station, which is good in some sort of minion-faced priest, but again, that doesn't exist. You got Najak Hexen, which I don't even know what this card is. Imagine playing this in a meta where you might not even be up against any minions that you want to steal. One cool card, Gift of the Naro, which I'm giving 3 stars to. I think that this is a generally good priest card, which will fit all the control priests out there, of which there's surprisingly kind of one. It's called a combo priest deck. It's the Rally Priest. I don't think Gift of the Naru is as good as Renew because it can't be used on turn 1 for one. You might not be damaged, and the opponent might not be damaged, and nothing might be damaged, in which case Gift of the Naru is just dead. But it is just a generally good control/value priest card, which is what priest is all about. Just currently, I don't really see a point to that card. It might even see play in the Death Rattle Priest, which I'm putting up Spirit Guide, Undying Disciple, and Zyrella the Devout, which I'm giving 2 stars to a piece. These cards are all actually quite good. I just don't think that the Death Rattle package is good enough yet. I think you're missing good Death Rattles. Undying Disciple aims against aggro, and yes, there's aggro out there, but Undying Disciple costs 6. That's quite a ways up, and there's a number of decks that don't care about your 6 mana 3 attack minion. Spirit Guide as well, 5 mana 5/5 taunt, which basically draws you 2 cards. That seems amazing, but I just don't see the entire deck as a good fit for the meta. There's just so many things that can go wrong for your control deck right now, and Priest isn't in a good spot. Over in Rogueland, you got some interesting tools for Death Rattle, Forsaken Lieutenant and Reconnaissance, and Snowfall Graveyard. While I think these are actually quite powerful cards, the Death Rattle package isn't there. It's a similar reason to Priest. It's like a value rogue, and while I may have been optimistic about value rogue throughout the entire history of Hearthstone here and there, never been right. Here, I'm quite certain that a value rogue will not work. Speaking of value rogue, you got the Lobotomizer, which is just not quite good enough. 1 star on all of those. Cold Tooth Yeti, 1 star. There's not a tempo rogue that works either while you're at it. The other tempo decks do it better. You've got this Burgle package as well, which is interesting. Seraphine Fleet Runner and Contraband Stash I'm giving 1 star to. And Double Agent Walpole No I'm giving 2 stars to, only because those are interesting additions to the Masquerade deck. And the Maestra, the Masquerade deck, I think is ultimately going to be a meme, very high rolly deck. But sometimes you do get your Walpole Null and Double Agent out very, very fast, and then you kill your opponent before they can do anything about it. But I don't think that's anywhere near consistent enough. I think it'll end up being a meme deck. Finally, you have Shadowcrafter Scabs. Wow, 5 stars. This card's actually very, very good. I think this card gets played in every single rogue deck, other than Tempo Rogue. All the parts of Shadowcrafter Scabs are relevant, between vanishing the board, between making your combos more accessible with the mana discount, between the 5 armor that you get. Just good all around. And hey, we go into the bright class of this expansion now. the Shaman. Shaman got some hookups, especially with the freezy stuff. Let's start with the worst of the freeze cards. That would be Glaciate. Even in a Frost Shaman deck, you shouldn't run all the Frost cards, and Glaciate is one of the ones that you shouldn't. It's a value card for 6 mana, which isn't even that much value. You just get an 8-cost spell for 6, 8-cost minion for 6. Meh, whatever. I think that Snowball Fight and Cheaty Snowball and Snowfall Guardian and Barren Glacier and Brucon of the Elements, those are all 2 stars. Why? Because they're more for a control shaman, a value shaman, and I just don't really see these types of control value decks working out because there's so many decks out there that can OTK you or perform value better with their repeated value. Even Quest Warrior, you know, the Pirate Warrior, where you just get free stuff out of your Juggernaut each turn, those I think can outvalue the value decks. Sure, the Snowball Fight is a pretty good control card. Sure, the Cheaty Snowball, that has a lot of applicable cards with it that could do a lot of damage, and it's a 3-mana 3/4. Sure, the Snowfall Guardian is a nice Frost Nova plus a big minion. Sure, the Barren Glacier can be repeated with the Macaw over a bunch of turns and be a legitimate win condition. Sure, the Brucon of the Elements can also be a win condition over time, very similar to Dr. Boom, Mad Genius. But those are just all too slow, in my opinion. And similar to that Wildpaw Cavern, which I'm giving 3 stars, as that is quite a lot of value over time. 4 mana to get 9/12 worth of stats. I think in practical terms, it might just be too slow. 3 stars is actually a little bit high for it, but I don't think it's very practical, but maybe. Which leaves us with the good Shaman cards. We got Windchill and Frostbite, which I think go straight into Quest Shaman. They're both cards that you would love to double up on, and they're both cards that, importantly, are Frost cards, which means that when you play your multicaster, you'll draw an additional card for the additional school of magic that you previously didn't have. And Windchill, when you have your quest done, will draw 2 cards, and Frostbite, when you have your quest done, will deal 6 damage. But besides that, Windchill will just be a decent stall while you get your quest going, and Frostbite will just be a decent removal card. So both of those will be great additions to Quest Shaman, perhaps great additions to other Shaman decks as well. Sleepbreaker, also 5 stars. Great card in Elemental Shaman, which is currently quite a good deck, tier 2, tier 1-ish. Nothing like a good old Sleepbreaker and an Arid Stormer, or a Sleepbreaker into Gyreworm. Both excellent plays. So while I don't necessarily think that the full Freeze Shaman is going to be a good deck, I do think that pieces of the Freeze Shaman are rather good. And we'll see play into current decks, which are better than the decks that are coming out here, that are control and value oriented. Over in Warlock, you got a few Fel cards that I think are rather bad. You got Seas of Destruction, you got Felfire in the Hole, you got Fellwalker, and you got Grave Defiler. I'm giving all of these 1 star, Grave Defiler 2 stars, just because that is a pretty good value card if it does find good Fel spells. And there are some good Fel spells out there. The Fel package in general is too slow, and why would you need to run this kind of weird Warlock stuff when you got a substantially better Warlock in terms of handlock or the quest lock? Hollow Abomination is just a big minion, and that's too slow. It's a slow value card, whatever. And then there's 2 interesting other ideas for Warlock. You got your Zoo/Death Rattle type deck. You got your Sacrificial Summoner and your Tamsin's Phylactery and your Desecrated Graveyard. Desecrated Graveyard is too slow. I think instead of Desecrated Graveyard, you run the better zoo cards like Sacrificial Summoner and Tamsin's Phylactery, which I'm both giving 4 stars to. I think that this gives the potential for a tier 2-ish zoo deck, which will be based around running eggs, a few Death Rattle cards, and then running Tamsin's Phylactery, which you might put on the tradable imp card. Put a big board out of zoo minions, cheap minions, put the Tamsin's Phylactery on it sometimes when you get lucky enough to have a Death Rattle die and you get the Phylactery. Could be a big bonus at the end. One interesting deck that I think is a meme is Tamsin's Phylactery could be used in conjunction with the Humongous Owl in order to OTK your opponent. But I feel like the better way to do that is just with Questlock. But what's really exciting is for your control lock decks. That's for both the quest lock deck and the hand lock deck, or even the quest hand lock deck. You got full-blown evil 5 stars, sick control tool, big answer to any of the aggro out there. Play it for deal 5 to minions, play it for deal 10 to minions, play it for deal 15 to minions, wow. And then you got Dreadlich Tamsin, which very well may be the best card in the set. Holy cow. The only downside of Dreadlich Tamsin is you stop taking damage when you use the hero power. For 6 mana, you get to draw 3 and deal 3 damage to all the minions. What a deal! And you gain the 5 armor, which, by the way, the armor doesn't stop you from taking damage for your quest. So, if you're afraid of taking damage for your quest lock deck, don't worry, there's plenty of ways to deal damage to yourself, and you may even want to put in some of the more cards that deal more damage to you. You'll put that into your quest lock deck, you'll put that in your hand lock deck, you'll put that in every control deck in Warlock, until Dreadlich Tamsin is out of here. And then you've got Warrior. Tossing up all the 1-star cards up here. It's most of them. First, there's a bit of a taunt theme. That's value over time. It's just not good enough. Taunt cards are not going to win you the game. You've got some really weird cards that are both control and dealing damage, such as Captain Galvangar and Rokara. You really want to go one direction or the other when you're playing a control warrior deck. You don't want to gain a bunch of armor and then deal some damage. You want to slowly whittle your opponent down. No need to deal this 9 damage charge thing. How ludicrous. Of the control tools out here, the Frozen Buckler, the Iceblood Garrison, the Snowed Inn, the Scrapsmith, the Axe Berserker, these cards just all are too irrelevant. A small shout out to the front, Captain Galvanger, Faceless, Wind Fury, both of your Captain Galvangers that have been double to the fronts. It's an OTK, it's a really bad OTK. So that leaves us with the only good card here, Shield Shatter, 3-star. I think it's a reasonable addition to your Control Warrior deck, and no, I don't think you should combo it with Frozen Buckler. For the neutrals, I'm going to do a really quick rundown where I don't bore you with all the cards I consider basically it's a value card which won't be particularly good in the meta I expect. And mention like some cards that may potentially look good, but I think ultimately don't have a place, such as Gnome Private, which is a 1-mana 1/3, but I think that's not good enough anymore. The Gangster, which is a 2-mana 4/2, but I feel like can get beaten by a bunch of 1-mana cards, minions, which make it not useful enough. The Popsicooler, which has a cool death rattle, but is basically too slow and too irrelevant, not big enough of a threat for 3 mana. You got your Herald of La Colar. I don't think there are enough Frost spells that are useful to tutor, and a 4-mana 3/5 draw a card is too slow, I guess. Just nothing important enough to draw with it. A lot of those have Honorable Kill as well, which are just value cards, good stats for the cost, nice benefit if you can actually fulfill the task. But I think for Honorable Kill, it might actually be pretty difficult to fulfill the task. So let's talk about, pretty much in mana cost order, the ones that aren't 1-star. Ivas the Forest Lord, 2 stars. This is a better Tiamat, and for that reason I'm giving it 2 stars, even though I actually think that it's probably too slow in a value card still, and Tiamat would not perform well in the meta now. This is a very flexible Tiamat, but yeah, it's just not good enough. It's a slow value card. Iron Deep Trog, 5 stars. This card I actually think could shake things up. It's a very spell-heavy meta. Iron Deep Trog, if you buff it and then get it on the board, it could make the opponent lose the game. Ram Commander, 4 stars. I think this is just a generally good card. 2 mana 2/2, which gets you 2 1/1 Beast Rushers in your hand. There's so many decks that would want to play such a deck. You got your Token Demon Hunter, you got your Beast Druid, you got your hand buff Paladin. And while it's not a slam dunk in any of those decks, I think that the card just is very efficient at what it does. Snowblind Harpy, 2 stars. I think that this has some potential in the Freeze Shaman. If you are going for this really late game control, then a 3-mana 3/4 that gains you 5 armor. That's pretty good, especially when you can copy that with the Macaw, especially when you can trigger the battle cry multiple times, you might be able to gain lots of armor. Drekthar, 5 stars. You know this one. You may have seen it played. It's actually, I think, the best variant of aggro Druid right now, where you cut the 4 and the 5 mana cost cards, you put in Drekthar, and then sometimes when you cast Drekthar on turn 4, you win because that is just such a powerful play. Stormpike Marshal, 5 stars. There's enough aggro out there that this neutral card could fit into a lot of combo decks and control decks and value decks that are trying to survive. I think that the potential for 1 mana 2/6 is just very, very good. 1 mana 2/6 with taunt even. Korok the Blood Rager, 5 stars. I think there's really only one deck that you really want Korok in, and that would be Death Rattle Demon Hunter, which I think loves Korok as a big 4 mana 3/5. Cheat the Korok out with your 3 mana card, which you cheated out with the 2 mana card. And then Korok is just kind of cool. Maybe I will be surprised and see him in some other deck as well. Most likely would be the Death Rattle Rogue deck, if that's good. Frostwolf Warmaster, 3 stars. There's a number of decks that cast a bunch of cards on the same turn. Garrett Rogue comes to mind, and it might want to run the Frostwolf Warmaster to just occasionally get a 0 mana 3/3 out on the board. Spammy Arcanist, 3 stars. It's Defile on a neutral card. There's a bunch of small aggro decks that you may want to put Spammy Arcanist in for your control or value deck to survive against. Bad news is it's 5 mana, but good news is it's neutral, so every single deck could use it. I think it's a reasonable choice to put in against token decks, small decks. You got your Humongous Owl, which I'm giving 2 stars on. I think this is mostly a meme. Tamsin's Phylactery plus Owl, put it on a bunch of your tokens. You could deal a lot of 8 damage on death. Humongous Owl could be put in a Death Rattle Priest. Humongous Owl could be a big beast for your big beast decks in Hunter. But in none of those cases do I actually see that being a good card or a good deck. Lock the Law of the Ice Lord, I'm going to put that at 4 stars. I think it has the most interesting uses in Warlock, which naturally moves their own health pool down. But also it's a good general tool for value or control decks against aggro decks. 5 mana 8/8 Rush Wind Fury is quite good. And so we've got one of our lowest star ratings in all the star ratings that I've reviewed. And unfortunately, I don't think Fractured and Alterac Valley will make a big impact on the meta due to the presence of strong aggro decks and strong infinite value / OTK decks, and even the presence of a strong aggro deck, which eventually does have an infinite value engine. I think that some of the old stuff will get nerfed, just so some of the new stuff can shine, and also, it would be a little bit too samey for next year's decks to also include a bunch of quest lines. We've got to make some room for these control decks to shine, these value decks.